wanted at court, be a debutante, or attract an aristocratic husband. Papa had not even given her time to recover from her ordeal before he had turned her over to his two odious sisters in a plot to have her marry, perforce, her toad-like cousin. Her darling father had very nearly succeeded in selling her like a slave into wedlock. She did manage, at a lucky chance encounter in a public lavatory, to slip a coded message to Enola, but with very little hope of rescue. By the morning of her nuptials, Cecily was so weakened by starvation and ill usage that she would have let herself be dragged like a rag doll through the ceremony. She would have been shackled by law to a loathsome husband if it were not for Enola. Enola, appearing at the last moment like a fairy tale hero, or at least like a fairly tall one. Cecily had learned more about Enola that day, for Enola had delivered her to her brother, who had turned out to be the great detective Sherlock Holmes. So, Enola was Enola Holmes, but to Cecily it seemed as if, truly, somehow Enola was her very best friend, even though they had only met twice, last January and last May. Well, 3 times, if one included a very brief and wordless encounter in the First Lady's lavatory of London. Sherlock Holmes had escorted Cecily to the safety of her mother's arms, and then, for a while, it had seemed as if all would be well. But far too soon, Papa had found them and taken them back, and he had imprisoned Cecily in her room, stating his intention to marry her off to someone, somehow, at the first opportunity. Not only had he deprived Cecily of her books and her art for punishment, but, to prevent even the most remote possibility of her escape, he had taken all of her clothes away. Which was why, in the middle of a sunny October afternoon, she had nothing to wear except a nightgown, and nothing better to do than scratch a big, fat likeness of her father on the inside of her locked bedroom door. Cecily's hand, holding the knitting needle, tightened into a fist. And instead of hurling her weapon at her target any more, she marched over and forced its point into the wood. Defiantly, with her forbidden left hand, she stabbed the effigy of Sir Eustace Alastair, Baronet. Chapter the 1st. October 1889. Alighting from my cab on that sunny October day, I felt an extraordinary sense of well-being. My new calling cards had finally arrived from the printer, and they bore my very own name, Enola Holmes. Wearing my brand-new cherry-red polonaise-style jacket, I was going calling on my best friend, and we had a great deal to talk about. Much had happened since the last time I had seen her, several months before. First and foremost, I was no longer a fugitive from my older brothers, Sherlock and Mycroft Holmes. Since that fateful July day when my mother had disappeared over a year ago, they had been trying to take me in hand, send me to finishing school, etc., and I had been running away from them. But, due to my adventures, indeed, my coups, during that time, they had made peace with me and agreed that I, Enola Eudoria Hadassah Holmes, was quite capable of living on my own, even though I was not yet of legal age. Also, and furthermore, all 3 of us together, we had learned the whereabouts of our mother. She had conveyed to us a most elucidating letter saying that she was now deceased, and she had known she had not long to live, but she had gone away to spend her last days in peace, beyond the clutches of society's dictates. She lay in an unmarked grave, and we were not to wear any ridiculous and ritualistic black mourning garments for her. In consequence of all this, reconciling with my brothers at the same time as losing my mother, I had paused to take a breath, so to speak, in my youthful but eventful life. I now boarded in a room at the Professional Women's Club, where even my brother Mycroft had to admit I was perfectly safe, as no males were allowed on the premises. And I had put off practising as a scientific perditorian, a finder of things lost, until the future. No longer spending my days at Dr. Regarstin's office, I was instead